hope you don't mind that I'm not showing my face today. At 72, I've learned that sometimes the most important conversations happen when you feel a little protected, I guess. You understand. But my voice? Well, that I can share. I was sitting at my kitchen table last Tuesday, staring at my electric bill for the third time that morning, when I realized I'd been holding my breath for 2 minutes straight. 2 years ago, that was my life. Today? Well, let me tell you what happened. As I share this, could you let me know you're out there? Maybe type your state or just, "I'm here" in the comments? It'd mean the world to feel connected. Even a quick note would make this feel like a real conversation. My name is, well, let's just say I'm a 72-year-old widow living in Atlanta. Been here 43 years now, ever since Dick, that's my late husband Richard, got transferred here from Birmingham for his job at Southern Bell. We loved this city. The dogwoods in spring, the way Piedmont Park looks when the leaves turn, how friendly folks are at the Publix on Ponce de Leon. Dick passed 3 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden as a summer thunderstorm. 1 minute he was telling me about the Cardinals game on the radio. Next minute, well, you know how that goes. What I didn't know was how expensive it would be to live alone. Nobody tells you that when you lose your spouse, you don't just lose half your income, you lose the bulk buying, the shared utilities, the way two people can make a dollar stretch. Suddenly, my teacher's pension, which seemed reasonable when there were 2 of us, felt like trying to fill a swimming pool with a garden hose. I started cutting corners. Generic cereal instead of Cheerios. 1 trip to Kroger a week instead of picking up forgotten items. I canceled my subscription to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Been reading that paper since 1981. But $30 a month for news I could get free online seemed foolish. No, wait, that's not true. I tried getting news online, but honestly, I never did figure out how to work that tablet my son bought me for Christmas. The words were always too small, and I kept touching the wrong things. Dick used to handle all the technology. I handled the cooking and the checkbook. Seemed fair at the time. The worst part wasn't the budgeting, though. It was how it made me smaller. I stopped going to my water aerobics class at the Decatur Recreation Center because the monthly fee went up to $45. Stopped meeting my friend Janet for our Tuesday lunches at Mary Mac's Tea House because $23 for fried chicken felt irresponsible. I stopped living, really, just surviving. My daughter Christine lives about 20 minutes away in Buckhead. She's a lawyer, very successful, beautiful family, 2 kids in private school. She'd call every few weeks, always rushed, always asking if I needed anything, but in that tone that hoped I'd say no. Last November, my 72nd birthday was coming up. For 50 years, I'd hosted birthday dinners. Nothing fancy, just family, maybe Janet and her husband Pete, good food, stories, laughter, the kind of evening that makes you grateful. But I looked at my bank statement and realized I had $63 until my next pension check. $63 for groceries, gas, everything. So I called Christine and said, maybe we could just skip it this year. Just a quiet birthday. Maybe dinner at home. Nothing special. You know what she said? "Mom, honestly, it's probably better this way. These family dinners are getting expensive for everyone with gas and bringing dishes and gifts. Besides, you know how crazy our schedules are." Then she added, "Maybe this is a good time for you to start scaling back on expectations?" Scaling back on expectations at 72, as if hoping for a birthday dinner with my family was asking too much. I hung up the phone and cried right there at my kitchen table. The same table where Dick and I had shared coffee every morning for 38 years, where we'd done homework with the kids, played Scrabble on Sunday evenings, where he told me about his day while I made dinner. I felt invisible, like I was becoming one of those old women you see at the grocery store counting coupons, and people look through them instead of at them. For about 2 months after that, I barely left the house except for necessities. Grocery store, pharmacy, doctor appointments. I'd watch the neighbors from my front window. The young couple next door with their toddler. The family across the street with teenagers loading into cars for school. I started talking to myself just to hear a conversation. Now, what did I come in here for? Oh, that's right, the light bulb. Better make some tea. Silly things, but voices, you know? One Tuesday in January, cold morning, frost on the magnolia tree in my front yard, I was walking to the mailbox when I slipped on a patch of ice I didn't see. Nothing serious, just landed hard on my hip, scraped my palm. But lying there on the cold driveway, looking up at the gray sky, I had this thought. If I'd broken something, how long would it be before someone found me? That scared me more than the fall. So I decided to try something. The Decatur Recreation Center has the senior program, not just water aerobics, but walking groups, share exercises, things that don't cost much. I figured, what's the worst that could happen? I'd already hit pretty close to rock bottom. The first morning I went, February 14th, Valentine's Day, which felt either perfect or cruel, there were maybe 15 people in the community room, mix of men and women, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The instructor was this young woman named Keisha, probably 30-something, with the kind of energy that made you tired just watching her. "Good morning, everyone," she chirped. "Ready to get those hearts pumping?" I thought, honey, at my age, we're trying to keep our hearts from stopping. But Keisha was patient. When I couldn't keep up with the arm circles, she showed me a gentler version. When my balance wasn't great during the standing exercises, she brought me a chair without making a fuss about it. After that first class, I was putting on my coat when Keisha came over. "How did you feel today?" she asked. Not rushing, not looking at her phone, actually listening. I told her it felt good to move again. Then, I don't know why, I mentioned how I used to do water aerobics but had to stop because, well, money was tight. She nodded like that made perfect sense. No judgment, no pity. Just, well, this is free and we're here 3 mornings a week. Hope to see you Thursday. Something about her tone. It wasn't charity, it was just belonging. So I came back Thursday and the following Tuesday. By March, I was looking forward to it. Not just the exercise, but seeing familiar faces, learning names. A woman named Grace who'd moved here from Savannah. A gentleman named Ernest who told stories about working at the Ford plant in Hapeville back in the 70s. Real people with real lives, not just existing. But then in April, the city budget cuts hit. The senior programs were the first to go. Keisha called everyone personally to let us know. She was crying on the phone, apologizing like it was her fault. I felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke. Find a little hope, then watch it disappear. For about a week, I went back to my old routine. Morning coffee alone, daytime television, early dinners with whatever was on sale at Kroger. But on Thursday morning, the morning we would have had class, I found myself getting dressed anyway. Putting on my sneakers, grabbing my water bottle, sitting in my car in the recreation center parking lot like some kind of lost person. That's when I saw Ernest walking across the parking lot, same time we'd usually arrive for class. We looked at each other through my car window, both of us probably feeling pretty foolish. I rolled down the window. "Morning, Ernest." He said, "Morning. Guess we're both creatures of habit." Then Grace pulled up. Then Dorothy from down on East College Avenue. 5 of us sitting in our cars in an empty parking lot, not ready to let go of the one good thing we'd found. Ernest, bless his heart, he just started walking toward the covered pavilion behind the building. "Well," he called out, "nobody said we couldn't take a walk." So we did. Just walked around the track behind the recreation center, talking about whatever came to mind. Weather, the news, whose grandkids were visiting for Easter. For about a week, we recognized that nothing changed. But then, the walks became a routine. The next week, 7 people showed up. Week after that, 12. People brought friends, neighbors. Grace started bringing a boombox, one of those old ones that takes D batteries, for music while we walked. By summer, we had almost 20 regular walkers. Dorothy suggested we rotate who brought snacks afterward. Nothing fancy, just crackers and cheese, sweet tea, whatever was reasonable. That's when I realized something had shifted, not just for me, but for all of us. Ernest, who'd been pretty quiet those first few weeks, started telling us about his days at the Ford plant. Turns out he had incredible stories about the civil rights era, about working alongside folks who'd been part of the freedom rides, about how Atlanta changed in the 60s and 70s. Grace started bringing old photographs from Savannah, sharing family recipes that went back generations. Dorothy, turns out she'd been a bookkeeper for 30 years and knew everything about organizing events, managing groups. And me? Well, I started realizing I had something to contribute too. You see, after Dick died, I'd gotten involved with AARP just to have something to do. Learned about issues affecting seniors, healthcare costs, Social Security, housing problems, stuff I'd never paid attention to when life was comfortable. But now, listening to our little walking group talk about their struggles, Ernest's medication costs, Grace worrying about property taxes, Dorothy trying to keep up with her grandchildren's school events on a fixed income, I realized we weren't alone in this. One morning in August, after our walk, I mentioned that the Atlanta City Council was having a meeting about senior services. Just an offhand comment while we were sharing Grace's homemade pound cake. "What kind of meeting?" Dorothy asked. So I explained. They were discussing the budget cuts, whether to restore some programs, how to better serve the older population. The kind of meeting where 3 people usually show up and nothing changes. "Well," Ernest said, finishing his cake, "maybe it's time more than 3 people showed up." 2 weeks later, 14 of us walked into that city council meeting. Not to complain, not to demand, just to tell our stories. I talked about how the recreation center programs had given me purpose after feeling invisible. Grace shared how exercise classes helped her manage her arthritis better than medication. Ernest talked about the value of community, of spaces where seniors could contribute and belong. Dorothy, bless her organized heart, had prepared a folder with information about the economic benefits of senior programs, how they reduce healthcare costs, keep older adults active and independent, create community connections that prevent isolation. The council members, they listened, really listened. 3 months later, the senior programs were restored. Not just exercise classes, but nutrition programs, computer training, support groups. They even hired Keisha back as the senior coordinator. She hugged me so hard at the first class back, I thought she might crack a rib. But here's what surprised me most. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution did a little story about our group, how we'd advocated for senior services, called us the Decatur Walking Warriors. Silly name, but it stuck. Christine saw the article. She called me that evening. First time in months we talked for more than 5 minutes. "Mom," she said, "I didn't know you were involved in all this." I told her about the walking group, the city council meetings, how we'd started organizing other seniors around the city to advocate for better services. "I'm proud of you," she said. 3 years since Dick died, and that was the first time she'd said she was proud of me. But then she said something that stopped me cold. "I'm embarrassed I called your expectations too much. I should have known you'd figure out how to make things happen instead of just waiting for them to happen to you." Turns out Christine had been worried about me for months. Worried I was depressed, isolated, giving up. But she didn't know how to help without making me feel pitied. I thought maybe if I didn't enable dependence, you'd find your independence. But I was just being scared and selfish. We talked for 2 hours that night. Really talked. About Dick, about money, about being afraid of getting old versus being afraid of not living fully. We asked if she wanted to have dinner for my upcoming birthday, not because she needed charity, but because she missed our family dinners. November rolled around again, 73rd birthday. Christine came, brought the grandkids, but so did Ernest and Grace and Dorothy and Keisha and 3 other city council members who'd become friends through our advocacy work. My little house hadn't been met full of laughter and conversation since Dick was alive. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Christine was helping me load the dishwasher. "Mom," she said, "what changed? You seem so different, stronger." I thought about it while I wiped down the counter. I told her I stopped waiting for life to happen to me. Started figuring out how to make it happen. Even when money's tight, even when things are hard, especially then. That's when you find out what you're actually made of. Today, our walking group has over 40 regular members. We've expanded to include advocacy training, where we teach other seniors how to speak up about issues that affect them. Housing, healthcare, transportation, social services. I've testified before 3 different city committees. Me, the woman who was afraid to spend $23 on lunch, speaking to rooms full of officials about policies that affect thousands of people. Dorothy handles all our logistics and communications. Grace organizes our social events. Ernest has started a storytelling circle where seniors share their experiences about Atlanta's history. And Christine? She volunteers with our advocacy program now, helping with legal questions, connecting us with resources. Her kids come to Ernest's storytelling sessions, learning about civil rights history from someone who lived it. I still budget carefully, still clip coupons, still look for sales at Kroger. But I'm not afraid of life anymore. Money is just money. Purpose, that's what makes you rich. Last week, a woman named Helen started coming to our walks. 75, recently widowed, feeling invisible. "I don't know if I fit in here," she told me after her first morning with us. "Honey," I said, "we don't fit in anywhere else. That's exactly why we belong together." 3 years ago, I felt like I was fading away. Now I'm proof that it's never too late to find your voice, to matter, to make a difference. Let me ask you some things if you're still listening. What's one small step you could take this week to connect with others? Maybe it's a community center class. Maybe it's talking to a neighbor. Maybe it's attending a local meeting about something you care about. What's a challenge in your community that affects people like you? Seniors, parents, workers, whatever group you're part of. Sometimes the problems we face individually are actually problems we can solve together. And here's a big one. Who in your life might be struggling quietly? A friend, a family member, someone who seems fine, but might actually be feeling invisible. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What resonates with your own story? What's one thing you might try differently after hearing this? You know, I still miss Dick every single day. Still wish I could tell him about council meetings and advocacy victories and Christine's kids learning about history from Ernest. But I think he'd be proud of the woman I became after he was gone. Not because I learned to live without him, but because I learned to live fully with the life I have left. We can't control everything that happens to us. Budget cuts, family disappointments, losses that break our hearts. But we can control how we respond. We can choose connection over isolation, purpose over self-pity, action over waiting. Even at 73, especially at 73, there's still time to become who you're meant to be. Well, that's my story. Messy, human, and hopeful. Thanks for listening to this old tale. You're not invisible. You know, your voice matters. Your story matters too.